Get started. So I'm going to actually pass out a sign-up sheet if you're interested in hearing more about artist marketing, that sort of thing. If you sign up, I'll send you a free PDF ebook on the psychology of selling art. So pass it. You don't have to sign it up, but you know, free stuff. So for info for you guys. So that'll be going around. Just to kind of start off, I don't necessarily like to be like, this is my class and this is what I'm going to talk about. So how many of you guys would how many of you would say you're more of on the writing side of things in terms of publishing, that sort of thing? Or are you more comic artists, illustrators, fine artists, animators, crocheters? So, or just why don't you guys go, okay wait, yeah. Writers. What? Writers, so okay. Zines, books, that sort of thing. Okay, visual artists, so illustrators, painters. Okay, majority. Crafters in terms of sewing, jewelry making, wood cutting, fabrication. I don't know. Okay, more stuff. Okay. For anyone else I missed that doesn't identify in any of those kind of categories? No.
Does comic book artists count as illustrator or writer?
Yeah. Okay, lots of comic people, so self-publishing, you're currently doing your own comics and that sort of thing, right? Okay, cool. Got a whole slew of people in that. Awesome. Okay. So, great. So I'm going to start off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Rick Digala. I am a freelance illustrator. I do fine art painting. I also publish my own zines and mini comics. I sell prints of my work online in stores. I run a screen printing business. And I also am a sponsored artist for a few different artist material companies. Crescent, South Fair, and Creek Markers in New York. So the reason why I started teaching this class is because early on when I was in art school, I found that I was making a lot of decisions in terms of what I was doing extracurricularly that a lot of my other peers weren't. And I was fortunate enough to have a few different people who kind of brought me into actually here at the Zine Fest. I helped organize for 3.5 years. I'm now a board member and for the Zine Fest. And that's kind of how I got into really kind of marketing myself and selling my work. And so from just exhibiting here at the Zine Fest, I moved on to selling at shows like Alternative Press Expo, Bazaar Holiday Fair. We've gone to Spectrum's Fantastic Arts Live in Kansas City. And we're slowly but steadily growing the number of shows that we actually participate in. I'm also a former gallery owner. I helped run Big Gorilla Studios for 2 years. And I also, I was talking about with Lauren a little bit earlier, I run a silk screen printing company. So I figured out very early on that a very essential part of an artist's education that isn't really being taught in school is how to actually monetize. I went to the Academy of Art here in San Francisco, and they did a good job of preparing me for a portfolio to actually be a professional illustrator or to really approach galleries and sell my paintings in galleries and doing all that sort of thing. But I kind of found out that one, my own personal work doesn't really fit into a lot of the gallery scenes, and I also found out that student loans can be really expensive after you get out of school. I don't know if any of you are dealing with that, but that's not fun for those that might be looking forward to dealing with that. I'm sorry. So really, I kind of developed this class and started doing these lectures and stuff to really kind of help get artists in the right frame of mind to sell their work. Because I found that two major myths that a lot of artists deal with is the idea of, it's kind of this duality of you're either the starving artist or you're the hyper successful artist, right? You don't really hear from people who are kind of in the middle You either are like, oh, I'm the person who you know, I work 2 service jobs and then I paint at home and then I just struggle and I toil for my art all the time and it's so painful. But then eventually at some point you're magically discovered and then this patron is like, I'll pay you $10,000 for a painting, and you're like, yay! And then you suddenly get in gallery shows, and you're a famous artist on Juxtapose, and in, you know, all these other things, and like, now you're Dave Cho, who, you know, has Facebook stocks worth $230 million, you know. That's kind of the 2 stories that the media kind of perpetuates perpetually, and that was redundant. You know, that's kind of what we're constantly fed. You either hear people who are hyper successful and are like, you know, it's like, I have 1 gallery show a year that just sells out before on the preview night, and I make, you know, $2 million from that, and I just live off that the rest of the year, and I travel, and I am awesome, and that's great. And then you have all the other people who are like, yo, you know, I'll sell you this painting for $5. I'm hungry and I need a burrito, you know, and that's totally, and that's a really terrible thing to be too, because you're really devaluing your work. And I know, especially when you're starting out, the one thing that art is really different from a lot of other professions is it's so emotionally involved. Constantly, you know, it's tough. Like when you're out here, you're even just selling at a, you know, Zine Fest or anywhere else, you're putting yourself out there. You know, people are walking by, you're like, why are they buying my zine? Or you're like, why won't you buy my prints? Or like, just buy a butter, it's $1. Come on, man. You know, it's really hard to kind of make that psychological jump between having to feel gratified and to kind of separate your value as an artist from how much money you make. And while this is a class about making money, and I want everyone to become a successful artist, and I share all this information because I don't think that there's only so many art jobs, or there's only so much, like, you know, there's this limited pool that like, oh, I'm making a living off art, so I need to like hold on to my share. Like, I think that's actually the absolutely wrong way to go about thinking about art and selling and making money from it. And yeah, that's kind of why I really think that, totally lost my train of thought, sorry. Anyway, okay. So yeah, so starving artists and overnight successes, right? One thing with overnight success is that a lot of times they're overnight success because they're only successful when mainstream media picks them up. There's tons of artists who make a living selling their paintings, you know, printmaking, making comics, all this other stuff, but you just don't hear about them because they're not like that 0.01% of the top elite who, you know, everyone knows about them, everyone is all, you know, like clawing to try to get them to work on the project. Those are the people who hear about it, but there's tons of people who make a decent living off their art. We just don't know their, you know, first and last name, you know, at the drop of a hat. So, and part of it is that those people who are the overnight successes is that they've actually been working their butts off, probably for about 10 to 15 years. You can just leave it there so it makes sense. Like, a lot of people don't know how long those artists have been making art and trying to go about it professionally before they actually are getting museum shows or, you know, being picked up by Dark Horse or whatever, you know. So part of it is to keep in mind that really, you know, to be upfront and honest, there's no like easy, like, get rich quick off your art, because it's really just going to be a lot of hard work and you constantly honing your craft and putting in your 10,000 hours and you just like grinding away and always working to make yourself better. And it's actually a testament to you all that are here, that you are actively seeking ways to help promote yourself, help sell your art, and help you know, further your career. Yeah. So that's kind of my overarching intro. Is there any major topics that like people specifically like really want to know about, or is it just kind of like you want to just know how to get more of your art out to other people? Anyone? Could be like as simple as like Facebook or social media, or like how how to get the jewelry, anything? No? Or, yes?
Is DeviantArt still a viable online option, or is that pretty much going downhill right now?
Okay, so, okay. That's a very specific question. In terms, are you talking about like selling prints off DeviantArt or just it as a community?
Just in terms of exposure and such. Because I was thinking of also getting a Tumblr account, because my other one's not getting a lot of hits, but I just want to know what your take was on that was.
Personally, DeviantArt is it's one of those double-edged swords in that there's tons of people on it and there's tons of people looking on it, but there's also such a wide spectrum of stuff on it. Like, and I don't want to categorize like good and bad stuff as in like, you know, very classically trained concept artists versus like sketch cartoonists, you know, because both artists definitely have a place and definitely have their own market, but there is kind of a very wide range of very young amateurs to highly seasoned professionals, and it can be difficult to really capture the notice of someone who's going to pay for your art from DeviantArt, because it kind of has that reputation of having such a wide spectrum. People think they can often lowball you. Or be like, hey, yeah, you know, it's my birthday, can you like do this commission for me? And it's like, no, you actually have to pay for those. Like, sorry, I don't just like make stuff. Like, you have, I mean, part of it too is valuing your own art as a commodity, you know, it's like, and the hard part is that there are a lot of people on DeviantArt who will just do a commission because they're trying to get more exposure, you know? And so, I'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of like social media a little bit more, but not to go on that too long, but I do know art directors who do look at DeviantArt and kind of occasionally skim it, but it kind of is it very much depends on what your core audience is and who you're trying to find, of whether or not that's going to be a viable solution. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but sir in the back?
Yeah, so I do a comic, and how do I find readers?
Okay.
You can go, pal.
Okay, so basically it's, how do we find readers? Okay, so that is going to be kind of more of a tactical thing. I'll get into tactics a little bit more. Well, let me ask this. How many people would say you've been kind of like professionally creating, and I define that very loosely in the terms of like you're actively trying to build an audience and monetize your art, and how many of you have been doing that for say 2 or more years? 1, 2.
So I'm not quite sure how to
Kind of like,
give myself that kind of definition, because I have a full-time job doing something else. So it's
yeah, but I mean like, but even if you do have a full-time job, I don't expect people to be doing this like as your sole source of income, but just like you've been kind of getting out there and trying to get readers and that sort of thing, right? Okay, so how many people would say that you're just starting out and you just kind of want to learn more and how to like get into it? Would that be a majority of the people? Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so part of marketing, a lot of artists also tend to shy away from the idea of marketing because it seems like this very sleazy, I don't know if like this is how you feel, but this is how I felt when I first kind of got into marketing. It's like, it's kind of this sleazy thing you do and you're like trying to con people into like giving you money, and it's like very like used car salesman-y. But I mean, that's how I started off, and that's kind of the connotation that I get when I first heard marketing. And as I've kind of like done a lot more research and learned and like found people like marketing instructors I've kind of gelled with, I like to redefine marketing as not something that I never think that you should think about it as like this hard sell, like where you're trying to push your art onto someone and be like, give me every last dollar. Like that's not the way you should actually think about selling your art for one, as well as how to market your art. What I would really, the way I define marketing is it's all the stuff you do to help people buy your art. So marketing is, and this is like a tactical thing you can do, is marketing is putting a call to action in your email signature. So it's super easy. I don't know how many of you use Gmail. I like live or die by my like 10 things filtering into one Gmail account. But it's very easy to make an email signature in which you just put something like, like check out my art on Facebook, and you have your Facebook link, or you have your website, or you have your Tumblr, or your blog, or whatever your online platform is. That's a very simple and fast way that's marketing. I actually get a lot of business from screen printing simply from saying, hey, do you need shirts printed? And then I have a link to my website. And you'd be surprised how many people are like, oh, you print shirts? My company needs shirts. Like, why don't I go through you? I know you. We went to college together. We're friends. And that's a very easy way. That's marketing. Or marketing is just attending a craft fair and passing out a zine or your mini comic. All of that, it doesn't have to be this really gross thing. I want you to think of marketing as a very positive, very organic thing that should feel natural to you. And, I'm going to go through some other different, tactical things. The one thing I've learned is you need to do what works best for you and your personality type. Obviously, me getting up here and talking for an hour, I'm definitely much more of an extrovert, and I know a lot of artists tend to really fear public speaking, or even raising your hand in a workshop, so I totally get it. I'm sorry I made you guys constantly do it. But, there's different ways that you can market and you can leverage a network. What's that? Keys that you found? Oh, I love you. And so there's ways that you can go about it, and you can still be successful without having to be oh, I'm going to go to these networking events that are on Eventbrite or stuff like that. You don't have to do that. I don't go to those. Yeah, it's just you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. So I want to preface that. And really, what I find, and this kind of segues into what I want to talk about next, is that you really need to, the number one thing that you can do to help out your career is find out who you are. Because I know it sounds very new agey and cheesy, but it's really true that when you're doing something you love, that's going to be what you're going to be most successful at. Because has anyone read any of Malcolm Gladwell's books? When I say the 10,000 hours, do people have a general idea? It's basically this idea that to become someone who succeeds at a high level at any given task, you have to have 10,000 hours of practice before you're really working at that top professional genius level, right? That's kind of it in a nutshell. It's basically do a lot of work, But 10,000 hours is really difficult when it's something you don't like. And this could even, if you're a comic artist and you're trying to, I really want to draw Adrian Tamini, he's, Optic Nerve is awesome, I love all, all of this stuff, and you're trying to draw like him, and that's not you, and, those aren't the stories that you need to tell, you're going to hate it. Even though, you love reading his work, if you don't actually like creating and those aren't your stories, it's just going to be painful. Personally, so a little bit about me. I went to UC Berkeley, and I got a degree in integrative biology there and Asian American Studies. And during that time, I really got back. I was very involved in kind of the liberal activist scene while I was there, as a lot of people do. And regardless of political orientation, that was where I was at. And so then, when I later went back to art school, I started off really trying to be this political artist, because that's kind of all the art I had seen at Cal, that's kind of all the stuff that I thought that I needed to tell, because I was like, oh, I'm an activist, I need to make activist art. And going from, I started doing graphic design, because I was like, oh, that's the safe thing, that's the art job that gets you money. And then I moved into illustration, because I was like, oh, I want to draw more, do less typography. but I still need to do that because that's what makes you money. And then by the time I graduated, I was like, you know what? I'm a fine artist because I can't deal with people telling me what to draw, and I just need to paint whatever the hell I want. And I went from trying to force myself to do a certain kind of art to now just painting monsters. And while when I first kind of started going to like darker, creepy horror art, I was very much confused. I was like this isn't political at all. I'm not saying anything. And I'm just drawing monsters because I love monsters. And really, as I started doing that, one, I started selling more paintings and selling more prints and making more connections with people who were hiring me for like random illustration jobs, more gallery shows, and all that started coming because I was having fun again. And believe it or not, your art actually reflects how much fun you have. You know, like when you are forced to do if you're looking to be a very technically skilled, classical realism comic book artist or a painter or illustrator or photographer, doing all of the like still life studies and color charts and all that crap, which really sucks and most people hate doing that you have to fight your way through that because that's going to give you the foundations to start doing the art that you love. But the main thing is that as you progress and as you start telling the stories that you want to tell and making the art that you want to make, that's when you're going to start finding an audience. Because really, being that art is so personal, art has to be about your stories. You're not anybody else. You might, you might tell kind of like personal, sad, tragic stories with not a lot of text like Adrian Tomini, but your stories aren't going to be his. You're going to have your own take, you're going to have your own viewpoint, and your own personality that's going to come through your writing, it's going to come through your art, it's going to come through your line strokes, the way you compose pictures, the way you use color. All of that is very personal to you, and even if you're like, someone's like, oh, your work reminds me of artist X, Y, and Z, doesn't matter. They're not telling the same stories that you can tell, and that is the most important thing for you to advance in your careers, is to really tear away all the things that you think that you want to do, and you think like, oh, I want to tell this story because these are successful stories, or I want to paint this way because, after James Jean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with James Jean, but he's a fine art, he used to be an illustrator. He illustrated the Fables comic book covers, and for a while, and then he started doing stuff for Prada, and he's one of the biggest contemporary illustrators of the past 10 years. And after he got huge, you saw tons of people emulating his stuff. And, while that might work out in the short run of getting illustration jobs because it's people who can't afford James Jean, so they're going to pay you because you can't command his kind of salary, in the long run, you see James Jean because that's his thing, that's how he makes art, and that's who he is. He's continued to do all the illustration and to go into fine art now, and where he can just paint whatever the hell he wants. All the other people, you don't see their work anymore, because now James Jean's style isn't in vogue, and now they're kind of out of luck, because they're just copying someone else. If your style resembles theirs, and that's how you make art, that's fine, because that's still who you are, and it's going to be really your composition. It's going to be, like I was saying, your choices of how you tell a story and how you make art, that's going to be how you're going to find your audience. So while, what this basically boils down to in marketing terms is your brand. Because really what you want to have is a cohesive brand. You want to have your cohesive storytelling elements, or your way of composing a photo, or your way of using Instagram filters, I don't know, whatever. You need to figure out what you do, and that's going to be what you do best, because that's something that no one else can copy, because it's coming from your entire life experience. And that's something that no one else is going to have, no matter how similar, and I can guarantee it. But like I was talking about, how you don't want to copy, another artist or another style or something. At the same time, you need to find your audience or your people, because really, you think of marketing, you think of like Coca-Cola, right? Who's like, we're gonna spend $7 million to have this 1-minute Super Bowl ad of like, I didn't even watch the Super Bowl, I don't even know what they did, but I'm sure they had something with young people having fun and drinking Coca-Cola. I don't know, right? And really, they're so big, what they're doing is they're just trying to reinforce the brand. There's a study shown that most people won't buy from an unknown brand until they've seen that brand 7 times. So it's kind of like, their kind of whole thing is like, we have a crap ton of money. We're just going to put Coke on everything and sponsor every event and just try to get our name so ingrained in your head that when you think, I want a soda, I'm going to go buy a Coke, right? That's kind of how marketing works. Anyone who says that marketing doesn't work on them is a liar, and it works on me. I know about it. I read marketing books all the time, and I still am like, I really want that. And I'm like, you sold me, damn you, company XYZ. But as a small consumer or small producer, what you want to do is you need to target your niche, right? And you need to find that out as soon as possible. Come on, you guys, you can grab some chairs. So, it's really about finding a hyper-focused niche and your audience, because, like that's the beauty about Zine Fest, is you can walk around and you can see there's like people selling like porno comics, and there's people selling autobiographical like love story zines, and you have people talking about like their day job, and it's like, and you have people making these crazy like monster books, and it's just like, there's something for everyone, and that's why it thrives as a marketplace, is because like most people, I'm not selling to people who don't like monster art, like plain and simple. Like if you don't like creepy stuff, like you don't even need to come by my booth, because you're not gonna like anything, or you may think, oh, that's really good, but you're not gonna buy it, And so people used to think like, oh, I want to just get myself out in front of as many people as possible. And really, like, that works if you have a lot of time, you have a lot of money, and like, you just want to do that. But really what you should be doing is focusing on trying to find small groups of people who really like what you have to offer. So, and really what you want to do is kind of come up with this idea of who your ideal buyer is. It's like, is it, people who like cats? That's a huge market. Like, go after cat people, They're like, oh, I do sculptures on, I do hyper-realistic flower sculptures. Well, you need to find people who are into flowers and into sculptures and where that overlaps. It's like, it sounds kind of silly, but a lot of people don't ever sit down to kind of analyze what they're making and who might be into it. And granted, there could be, you could be like, oh, I make these hyper-realistic flower sculptures, but flower people aren't into that. Because maybe flower people are like, oh, I want real flowers and not sculptures, whatever, I don't know. Maybe they like flower sculptures, hypothetical. But the point is that you really need, think about who might want to pay you money for your art and find those people. And then if they don't buy your art, think about who, like shift your assumptions a little bit, Or if you have the experience of actually selling at a lot of cons, be like, oh, what kind of person buys which items? It's like, and so, it's all about niche marketing. If you want to read more, like a lot more on it, you should read this guy named Seth Godin. He's kind of the grandfather of modern marketing. Highly recommend his books. And there's also a lot of really good Seth Godin stuff that's very kind of like inspiring as a small-time producer. The Icarus Deception is one of his newest ones. Highly recommend it. And so, like talking about the people, your people, it's a lot about being like hyper-specific. And like, I really don't like to stereotype people, but it's very important to kind of, at the beginning, like, be like, okay, you know what? My audience is like 18 to 30-year-old men who play Dungeons and Dragons, right? Or whatever. Like, if that's your audience and that's your niche, you find those people. And you're like, even though you're like, oh, well, I make a comic book. how do I find, like, there's not a crossover there. It's like, well, go to a game shop and chat these guys up and play some Dungeons and Dragons and like, be like, oh yeah, I make this comic, check it out. And like, you know, like there's very easy ways to finding multiple markets that you may not think are like a traditional place to sell comics, arts, prints, whatever. You know, I know like one of my buddies here, he actually found that a lot of his art goes really well with like the furry community. You know, like the people who dress up in like big animal costumes and like that's their thing. Like his art does really well there. Or like I know another guy who goes to the to AVN, like the adult video big like porno conference, right? And it's a bunch of people selling sex toys and he's selling art. He's the only one selling art. So people were like, oh, this is pretty cool, like I'll buy that. And it's kind of like finding markets that you didn't know that you have. You know, and you know, like you don't have to spend all this money to go to conventions, but it's like try to think outside the box of like, you know, where do these people shop? What do these people eat? Like, what's their lifestyle? Because that's, you know, more ways of finding these people. Obviously, the easiest way is like finding online communities of these people. You know, or like a little bit farther down the line would be like trying to use SEO to like get up in like. One technique you can do is you can make, this might be a little bit more on the bad side, but you can make microsites where you're buying like domains or using other portal sites to basically kick traffic over to your main site, but then you take those mini sites and you SEO optimize them, which is search engine optimization for people that don't know, which is basically how to get higher up on Google rankings. And you kind of like optimize those little sites for your little niche communities. So even though your main art comic site like doesn't have anything to do with like, I don't know, like like furries, maybe you have these other sites that are on the community that get furry traffic that can then kick them over to something to your sites. So yeah, going over this slide. Okay, any questions so far? I know I've just been kind of like rambling on and talking anything. I'm about to get into more like social media and online stuff, so keep going. Questions, yes?
What was it, search engine?
Optimization, it's called SEO. You can pretty much do Google searches. There's like tons of firms that will do it for you. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a class in itself, but yeah, it's something to kind of think about.
Would that be a good strategy for promoting an art gallery?
Yes, definitely. I mean, like in terms of if you're an art gallery owner, like something, if you have a physical space, one, like in my experience, Google, trying to get out as many business listings as possible is one really key. So like Google Maps, you can have like a business listing there. That's like create like a business profile on like Google, Yahoo, MSN, and that already in itself is a lot more than a lot of businesses are doing. And at that point, once you get that kind of going, you know, making sure you have like a presence on Yelp and like, you know, you're having events and you're trying to like promote people back to you with Facebook pages. Yeah, I'll be getting into it a little bit more. We can talk specifically afterwards if you have any specific questions about like art gallery marketing. But, cool. Excuse me. So, kind of the baseline that you should all be striving for is to basically have photos or scans of your work. Good quality. If you don't know how to take photos of artwork, find someone. Talk to your photographer friends. Put ads up on Craigslist, you know, like if you work a day job, try to like trade something for photographers, whatever you have to do, read online, I mean, go to YouTube. I mean, there's like tons of stuff, you can learn how to do anything on YouTube. I bet you if you YouTube how to photograph your art, you would find like 5 tutorials. I can't actually vouch that. If someone wants to do it on their iPhone, you can let me know how many you find, but I'm sure you can find it. And really, you really need the photos because that's what's going to sell your online presence. And in terms of online presence, ideally, you have your own .com or something, but at the very least, you need some sort of site. What I highly recommend is if you're not tech savvy enough to I'm going to install my own WordPress and get an e-commerce, like all that stuff going on, which is a little bit more advanced and a little bit more technologically in depth. At the very least, get like a free blog, like Blogger, Tumblr, I don't know, even Pinterest. You can have your own boards of your art, making business pages then. Facebook page, whatever. And then what you do is you buy a URL of yourname.com or yournameart.com or your shop name out there, whatever. Ideally, it would be something, your brand that you're going to stick with in the long run. And what you do is you just buy that domain, and then you pay for that domain to forward to whatever your thing is. So that way, suddenly you're not like, yeah, man, check out my art. I'm at, blogspot.com/something.com, and it's this huge URL. Be like, oh no, I'm at ricktoyout.com. Boom. And something small, it can fit on a business card, it's something memorable, and it's still taking them to your blogspot, it's taking them to your Tumblr, it's taking them to your, facebook.com/pages/ whatever art. It's still taking them there, but you're having a shorting URL because people have very short attention spans and bad memory, and it's really, also, if you're doing this right and you're constantly promoting yourself, you have to type this like a bajillion times. So you don't want to be like, facebook.com, no, Blogger, it's like, no, just simplify it and get a URL that can forward to a site. And that can be your website, as long as you have pictures of your artwork. I also highly recommend having an about page, because like I was saying earlier, your story is what's important and what's going to sell art. And so, you really want people to be able to identify with you. And because that's the people who are probably going to buy your art. Something about your experience that they feel like, oh yeah, I also feel identify as this, and you make really cool art. That's one more step for you to selling something. So about site, about page, someplace on it, you need a website. Ideally, if you have a product to sell, whether that's prints of your artwork, original paintings, zines, comics, ebooks, MP3 downloads, whatever, having an online store eventually is super duper helpful. There's sites like storeenvy.com, I would definitely check them out, or Etsy.com for handmade goods. Those are easy e-commerce sites that are kind of already formatted for you. They don't charge you anything unless you actually sell them. Etsy charges a percentage of sales. StoreEnvy, if you use a custom domain name, it's $3.99 a month. DeviantArt has a print shop, Society 6, you can outsource all the production of your prints until someone buys it, which is kind of nice, so you don't have to stock inventory or mail things to people. The good thing about all those sites is that there's a lot of people browsing it anyway. The bad thing about those sites is that there's a lot of people posting things on it because a lot of people are browsing, and it might be a little bit hard to find your stuff. And so you have to do a lot of marketing anyway to drive people to your Etsy shop, to drive people to your StoreEnvy or your DeviantArt, whatever, print page. The one downside of those, and it's and I talk about this because I use WordPress and stuff to build my own kind of e-shop, and so I don't really deal with a lot of the other shops. I really just do those as kind of extra promotional and extra web presence. But if those sites, for whatever reason, ever went down, then suddenly you're missing a platform. So if you have the time and resources to invest in your own web shop, that's kind of the ideal, but I know that's out of a lot of people's technological abilities, so there's a lot of cool ways that you can get shops up really quickly without having to touch any code or HTML or CSS or anything. So, either way, I always recommend having a personalized site to direct things to your it's just easier and it's cleaner, and you look more professional, right? You're like, as opposed to being like, what's your portfolio? Oh, I'm at behance.net/portfolio/blah, blah, blah. You're like, oh, my portfolio site is, yourname.com. Here you go, here's my card. And, it'll also kind of instill confidence in you that you can start taking yourself a little bit more seriously as a professional artist. And, I don't know, like confidence and confidence boosters go a long way. So as many little wins that you can make, whatever you need to do, like, oh, I need to get a business card. If that helps you out, which I recommend having because it's easy to pass out. And I can be like, oh, you need more information? Come get a card. Here's a million. It does add some legitimacy to you. And, I don't want to say that, when I used to run the gallery and I would be looking for new artists, I will say that if I had two artists of equal skill and equal price point, and someone gives me a link to a blogger, and someone gives me a link to their own site, I'm going to go with the person with their own site, just because I'm like, you're taking your career seriously, and I think that you're going to push people to my gallery because you want to sell your art. And even if they give me a website and goes to a blogger, I'm like, oh, you're sneaky, I like that, and I'd like to do more. But it's about presentation, and it's kind of stupid that we have to play like these kind of like, oh, I'm a professional artist, I have my own .com, I'm Rick at rickkitagawa.com, like all these other things, but really, it does affect how people perceive you, and the more serious you start taking yourself, the more serious other people will start taking you. It really is one of those things, I'm sure you've probably heard the term fake it until you make it. I don't really believe in that. I think you should fake it until you become it, which is a longer lasting change, and that's really internalizing that you are a professional and your art is worth money. And you should never forget that too. So that's one of those things that, whatever you need to do to start believing that your art is worth something, take those steps as early as possible, because really that psychological change can actually bring about a lot of differences. Even like the way you interact with people who may be buying your art, when you're being like, oh please, like, oh yeah, no, I can drop that down to $100 for you, yeah, no problem. For someone who's being like, oh yeah, the price is $2,000. Like, oh, are you interested? That change can really be the difference between selling something for $100 and selling something for, $2,000. Or they're like, oh, I don't have that kind of money. What about $1,500? You're like, wow, that was still like $1,400 more than I was expecting. So awesome. And and not with that example, I don't want to make you think that you should suddenly start overpricing your art because you just think you should. But there's a difference between you want to price accordingly to your market, and you don't want to undercut yourself. You really want to, if you want to at someday make a living completely off making art, you should actually figure out how long it takes you to draw that comic. How long does that take you to make that painting? And then how much money do I need to be paid per hour in order to make a living? And that's really how much you need to sell stuff. At the beginning, there's a little bit of flexibility because sometimes you're not going to have a lot of collectors in the beginning, and you just have to, you got to make rent. I get it. There's days that I'm like, yeah, $5, like, here's a sketch, $5, like, whatever. Or oh, I just need to make something that's going to sell because you have to make money. And that's the reality. I have huge student loan bills, it's kind of stupid. But it's, don't price your buyers, out from buying your stuff just for the sake of ego, but at the same time, you need to make sure that you're respecting yourself as an artist and your work. So I realize we're running out of time because all this psychological stuff I want you guys to have. But okay, so social media. A lot of people ask oh, do I need a Facebook and Tumblr and Instagram and Pinterest and Blogger and how much of this stuff do I actually need to do? I always like to say that do as many as you can do well. You know, so people who are like, I need a Twitter, I need a Facebook page, oh, I need mine, and then I need to do my 3 times a week blog page. I'm like, you know, like if you have time and you enjoy doing all that, and I'm like, oh, I got an Instagram this, like, you have, you know, if you have time and you like that, then do it. Really, if you have time to do one thing, just do that. If you're only on Tumblr, but you do Tumblr really well, just do Tumblr. If you're, you know, you have a smartphone and you're on Instagram, and you're just like, I love taking photos of my art and photos of cool stuff, just do Instagram. That's kind of the basis of, do I need to be on this platform? You don't need to be on any platform. You need a platform, just one, but whatever it is, just do it well. And how do you do social media well? Part of it is, like, going back to that brand, is you really want to have a consistent voice throughout. Like, as much as I like taking pictures of food, I don't do that on Instagram because I've now turned my Instagram into a business account and I only post either creepy things, which my audience would appreciate, or art-related things. And because I do creepy art, it's kind of like one of the two, you know? It's like, if I'm going to take a photo of something, it's going to be creepy. If I'm going to, you know, otherwise, like, it's kind of not as fun as I'm like, oh, dog, you know, like, and I'm like, oh, wait, don't Instagram, it's fine. But, you know, really, what you want is you want, like, are most people on Instagram or no? Okay. Part of what Instagram is when you go to your profile, you see all of, like I think you see 12 of your last photos. What you want to do is have that be all consistent of where it's the same kind of theme, where it's not like, oh, this is a pencil drawing, oh, this is my mom, oh, this is some food, oh, here's 4 hyper-rendered paintings, like, oh, here's, you know, like a cat, like people, like, you're diluting your voice, and when you're marketing, like when you're using your own Facebook account, I don't care what it looks like, do whatever you want, like, or if you have your Instagram and that's just for fun, just do it for whatever you want. But if you're specifically trying to do it for a business, make sure that it's very clear cut and it's very, you know, like your voice is coming through that, whether that's photos, whether that's text, that, you know, like the way you, like some people are known for like really funny hashtags on like Twitter and stuff, like whatever you're doing, just make sure that you're consistent with that, you know? And the other thing is you want to interact with any people who come by your page. So if someone is like, hey, great painting, you're like, hey, thanks so much for coming by. Just to show people that you're not like this robot that only cares about promotion. Because that's another thing is that with social media and like Facebook and stuff, ideally you want it to follow the 80-20 rule, which in this case means you want to basically 80% of your posts should be giving value. And whether that's photos of your art, discussions of your process, you know, like process photos, stuff related to your comic, you know, like, oh, I took this photo of this car accident, here's a short story I wrote about, whatever it is, you know. You want to provide 80% of the content, and then 20% is, hey, I'm in this, you know, writing contest, can you vote for me? Or, hey, you know, I'm going to be at this, I have a gallery opening, like, come check it out, like, because if all you're saying is just like, I'm here, people are like, oh, you're basically just promoting yourself and I don't really need to follow this thing. So you really want to give value, and that doesn't mean like you're giving away things for free, but you really do just need to like, you know, like if you don't want to show a whole painting, if you're uncomfortable with putting that out, show like an up-close detail portrait piece, enough for people to get an idea and be like, oh, I really want to see that at my gallery, or oh, I really want to go to their website to see the main thing, or like, oh, I really want to go buy this print, or I need to read the entirety of this comic because you only showed me one panel. Like, you know, you don't have to give away like everything you have, but you have to constantly provide value to have people continually want to follow you. Because, you know, this is how we all consume, right? Like, you sign up to some newsletter, and if all you're getting is just like, buy my crap, you're just like, unsubscribe or archive, or like, open filter, never see you again, peace out, you know? You want to have like all the best marketers that I have give 90% away of their stuff for free, and then they charge really premium prices for that 10% that's like all the exact how-to stuff. And I keep reading their stuff every single time because they have such great content that I'm like a fan for life. And it's, you know, like, this one guy I read has like a $5,000 online course. Like, when I'm at that point where I have $5,000 to spare on that, I'm gonna drop money for that. And, you know, it's because it's like, I know that if I have gotten so much value from this content earlier, I'm gonna invest in that. And so it's the same thing with like your art. Like, if you're like, oh, like, you know, like all these strips, like these little panels of this story that I'm telling. I need to see everything. Here's the money for your ebook comic, or like, here's the money for your comic, send it to you, you know? And that's really how you kind of build this online platform, and how you start really engaging with your people by telling your specific story. So I think that is it. Any last questions? Hope you guys got something out of this. Yes?
Would you recommend posting fan art of certain characters to grab the attention of the niche audience along with original work instead? Or would that be convenient?
As a blogger, I would say yes.
You'd say yes?
Because a lot of times I'll post somebody's fan art and I'll say, oh, and they also have a comic, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. I mean, if you look at like a lot of the pop culture art type blogs, like that's what gets picked up is like, oh, someone did a series of, you know, it's like the Disney princesses, like with like the costumes modernized or like to be historically accurate. Everyone goes and clicks that link, and then you're like, oh, cool, I'm gonna go like see what else they do. You know, it's you know, it's a good thing.
Okay. I've always been iffy about the whole fan art angle thing. I'm never going to sell it as a copyright.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the main thing. You just have to make it clear that you're not selling, you know. But if you're doing it as a personal project, you kind of like
Get their money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Cool. Thank you very much. I know the email was